is one of the world's largest and most secretive investment funds. Nicknamed the Ex-President's Club, Carlyle's employees have included both President Bush, H.W., and George W. Bush, former British Prime Minister John Major, former Secretary of State James Baker, and former Defense Secretary Frank Carlucci. Amidst growing public scrutiny over its dealings, the company has recently scaled back its holdings in military contractors and its links to controversial political figures, but that appears to be changing. On Friday, the intelligence firm Booz Allen Hamiliton said it would sell its government-oriented unit to Carlyle Group for $2.5 billion. Booz Allen has been a major figure in the privatization of government intelligence. Current National Intelligence Director Mike McConnell was Booz Allen's Director of Defense Programs before his appointment last year. Booz Allen's been deeply involved in some of the Bush administration's most controversial counter-terror programs, including the infamous Total Information Awareness data mining scheme. The Carlyle-Booz Allen deal awaits shareholder and regulator approval. Tim Shorrock is the author of Spies for Hire, The Secret World of Intelligence Outsourcing. In a new article for CorpWatch, Shorrock says Carlyle's purchase of Booz Allen would lead, quote, to its reemergence as the owner of one of America's largest private intelligence armies. Tim Shorrock joins us now from Washington, D.C. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Tim.
Thank you, Amy.
It's good to have you with us. We'll start off by talking about the significance of Carlyle buying, if it's approved, Booz Allen's government unit.
Well, as you said before, as you said earlier, Carlyle has kind of scaled down its defense investments in recent years, but this is a major plunge back into it. Booz Allen Hamiliton is one of the largest intelligence contractors in America. It also plays a very strategic role, I would say, in U.S. intelligence as an advisor to agencies such as the National Security Agency. And it also advises all the key combat commands of the United States military and other key agencies such as the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And they don't just provide technology, they provide, all kinds of expertise and all kinds of sort of management consulting to these agencies, help them decide how to spend their money down the road. And they have many, many people on staff who have played very senior roles in intelligence.
Can you talk about Michael McConnell and his journey from Booz Allen to national intelligence?
Well, McConnell began as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Navy. He became well known to Americans when he was the intelligence advisor to Colin Powell during the first Gulf War. And then after that, he was appointed to be director of the National Security Agency at the very tail end of the first Bush administration. He ran the National Security Agency, which of course does eavesdropping and surveillance on telephone calls and emails all over the world, including in the United States. He ran the NSA for a few years, and then he went directly to Booz Allen, where he became the director. He was a vice president of Booz Allen. He was a director of their military intelligence programs. The important thing for listeners to know about military intelligence is that the Pentagon controls about 85% of the entire intelligence budget. And so when we're talking about military intelligence, we're talking about a huge swath of intelligence. And so in that position, he advised the NSA, he advised many of the other agencies, and so he played a very important role in intelligence. And I would say that people like McConnell, when they're in the private sector playing this kind of consulting role to the agencies, they might as well be called an intelligence official with a proviso that they are working for the private sector. So then, as you also mentioned, during his time at Booz Allen, they played an important advisory role in many important Bush administration programs, such as Admiral Poindexter's program, which was designed to, collect all kinds of information on American citizens to allegedly root out terrorism here.
Tim Shorrock, can you lay out what you call the intelligence industrial complex?
Well, in my book, Spies for Hire, I describe this intelligence industrial complex as a $50 billion industry, and I base that on what our intelligence budget is now and figures I've gotten on the percentage of money that's actually spent on contracts, it's about 70% of our entire intelligence budget goes to private contracts. So this complex is about, I would say, about 100 companies. There's many more, but 100 companies that really play important roles, have major contracts, and they range in size from Lockheed Martin and companies like Northrop Grumman, big defense contractors that we usually associate with building planes or big ships. They're very involved in intelligence at all levels. To small companies like Spectal, which is a little company in Virginia that employs about 200 or 300 people with high-level security clearances who go and work for the CIA and other agencies and missions in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. You also have companies like Booz Allen, which are more like consulting companies. They have millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts with the agencies. Booz Allen, I might add, also not only has contracts with the various agencies, but as well as with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So they're advising our intelligence leaders on what kind of technology to buy, all aspects of intelligence.
As you say, Mike McConnell, the Director of National Intelligence, is the first contractor in U.S. history to take leading role in the U.S. intelligence community.
That's right. And that's pretty important fact for people to know. I mean, in the past, leaders of the intelligence, there's only been, 2 directors of national intelligence under the intelligence so-called reform bill that passed in 2004. The first one was an ambassador, Negroponte, and then McConnell took over. But never in the past has there been someone gone straight from the private sector to running U.S. intelligence. They always come out of the, in the past, it was always the director of central intelligence was the director of all intelligence, was the president's primary advisor on intelligence. So here you have somebody who spent, over a decade as a very high-level private consultant running intelligence operations for profit, being the president's primary advisor on intelligence.
Tim Shorrock, start naming names. Talk about the U.S. corporations, the multinational companies that are involved in the intelligence industrial complex.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of companies that people recognize because they're big defense contractors, and they've grown, like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, BAE Systems of Britain, for example. They've grown in intelligence often by buying smaller companies and putting together intelligence units of their own. There's also companies like, at sort of the middle level, I call them, companies like CACI International, CACI, which, as listeners know, was one of the contractors involved in the prison abuse scandal at Abu Ghraib. They're a very, very important intelligence contractor, and they operate at all levels of all the agencies, from the CIA to the NSA to many military intelligence agencies. There's other companies here in Washington. There's one called Mantech International, for example, that does a lot of work for the National Security Agency, particularly in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, where they're out actually in the front lines, tracking enemy weapons systems and listening in on conversations between insurgent groups and helping the U.S. military track people down. So it covers a very wide range of companies, and probably most of these companies, very few people know about them. We talked at the top of the hour about Carlyle buying Booz Allen. Carlyle, in 2003, bought a company called Kinetic, which is spelled with a Q. It's a British company, and Kinetic used to be the Defense Intelligence Research Group, a research unit of the British military, and it was privatized in the early part of the Bush administration. The Carlyle Group bought it, pumped hundreds of millions of dollars of investment capital into it, and it was already had contracts. Kinetic already had contracts with the Pentagon, various defense agencies here. But with Carlyle's money, they really advanced into the intelligence market. And with that capital, Kinetic bought 5 or 6 medium-sized intelligence companies and really expanded into the intelligence industrial complex. And that's sort of typical of the way companies expand. They buy companies primarily for the contracts they hold with intelligence agencies. So Carlyle did it with Kinetic. Then they sold their holdings, made about a $500 million profit off of it, and then they've obviously been looking around and decided Booz Allen would make a very profitable investment. And I'm sure over the next few years we will see a fair amount of expansion from Booz Allen as Carlyle pumps in more capital and they buy other companies and grow even larger.
We're talking to Tim Shorrock, investigative journalist. His new book is out. It's called Spies for Hire, The Secret World of Intelligence Outsourcing. We'll come back to this conversation in a minute.
I see y'all too. Now.